get ready for takeoff. Unlike the runway at Gatwick Airport, there is no sign of any suspended activity here in podcast land. Instead, it's very much go, go, go as we are joined by one of British athletics' brightest young 400-metre runners. With a festive season now here and 2019 around the corner, it's also time to look back on the past 12 months. From every pivotal, inspiring moment, we will give you our defining sporting highlights of 2018. Just like that Gatwick drone, we refuse to be shot down. Welcome to SportSpiel. Hello listeners, welcome to episode 33 of the podcast. I am here as always, as is Mr. Will Moulton, for our last show of the year.
How quickly the year's gone as well. And what a year it's been. Some of the guests we've had on the show, some of the topics we've discussed have been pretty incredible. Cannot wait for 2019.
Exactly. Christmas is almost here as well. As this goes out, just 2 days until the big day. 2 questions. Namely, what are you doing for Christmas? And 2, have you done your Christmas shopping now?
I have done my Christmas shopping. I haven't quite wrapped anything yet. I've got 2 presents still to do because I ran out of paper, annoyingly. So I need to go and buy some later today. But I've bought everything. I need to sort out cards, but that will be fine. What am I doing for Christmas? Just the 4 of us, really. Me and my mum, my dad and my sister. Spending the day at home. Hopefully this year I won't be ill, as I have been the last 2, so I actually get to enjoy it. What about you?
Likewise. Except on question 2. I have not finished my Christmas shopping yet. I've done most of it, but I still have some extra bits and bobs to finish up. And yeah, I am working tomorrow as we record, so Sunday. But after that, I'm then going home on Monday and spending the week with the family and eating copious amounts of food, drinking a lot.
I was going to say that's what Christmas is all about. Maybe not the drinking so much, but eating a lot of food.
I didn't say alcohol. Stop making judgments.
You implied it. It's fine.
Yes. Anyway, what have we got for you in our festive treat of an episode? Part 1, as ever, is our feature interview section, and this time around we'll be hearing all about British 400-metre runner Amy Allcock. In part 2, we will be having our review of 2018 in sport, including our best, worst, most inspirational and controversial moments of the year, among some other categories as well. All of those exciting things are to come, but first, it's time for our feature interview. 25-year-old Amy Allcock enjoyed a real breakthrough in 2018. A personal best was achieved in the summer at the Anniversary Games, and the 400-metre runner was also selected as one of 114 athletes to be a part of the British Athletics world-class programme. But what actually makes the runner? Funnily enough, while at university, by her own admission, Amy didn't exactly commit fully to her sport until much later on. In order to improve, she also had to deal with a number of mental challenges, self-doubt, the fear of lactic when she ran, and she also had to accept that she was the type of person who would vomit after every single race. But together, with her coach, there have been some huge strides recently, allowing her to be where she is now, and she's only getting started. Welcome back, listeners, where it is time to talk to another athlete in our feature interview section. This time around, we're delighted to say hello to British 400-metre runner and 2018 World and European Indoor Bronze medalist, Amy Allcock. Thanks for coming onto the show, Amy. How is everything, considering we're coming up to Christmas time as well?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, things are really good. It's a bit different this year because obviously I had such success in the 400 last year. We have kind of committed fully to the 400, but I'm not having a big indoor season. So my winter training started a bit later, got a bit more of a break after the Europeans. And then we've been doing 400 training. Everything's going really well with that, but we're very conscious that the season is such a late season for us that we don't want to do too much too soon.
Exactly. And you mentioned just before we started recording as well that there's currently a training camp coming up this weekend as we record, so it's still very much on the go, even though we're in the winter time.
Yes, I think especially for, I think any event basically, like the winter is where you put your hard work in, and that's where you kind of reap the benefits in the summer. So winter's been very full on. We've got a new training group this year. We've added a few new faces into the training group and made it a bit more 400 specific, which has been fun. Adding new people into any training group can be a challenge, but I think like my training group, and I've said it throughout the whole year, they've been genuinely the best thing for me. They've helped me so much. Everyone chips into a session. There's often times where I have a run by myself, but someone will do an extra run just so there's someone with me. So it's working really well. The dynamics of my group are amazing, and I think for athletes that have that, like, it's such a benefit.
Exactly. And on that note, then we'll start with the year 2018, since we're almost at the end of it now. And people have almost described it as a breakthrough year, if you like, from your point of view. You look at the bronze medals, I suppose, and also the PB that you got at the anniversary games as particular highlights, I suppose. Was it the breakthrough year for you? Would you go along with that description?
I think it's a year where I surpassed my expectations. I think as a junior, I did 300s, and I was always up there with the kind of like in the top of the UK for the 3. And I was at an age where obviously I couldn't do 4s. And then I made the decision to step down to 2s. And that was purely because when you're a teenager, there's so much else going on in your life, and you can't commit to one thing. And I was very much like, I liked to run and I enjoyed the speed side of running, and I liked to run fast, but I wasn't very good at committing a lot of work and putting a lot of hard work in when I was younger. I didn't realise at the time that would affect my future in the sport. So when I moved to Loughborough in 2011, I came up here to study. I kind of sat down with my coach at the time, and we kind of had a plan where it would be a slow process, but eventually I'd move up to 4s, because that's kind of where I was always going to end up. And I hit a few snags with it, and I got quite a few injuries that they weren't bad injuries, they weren't kind of like broken bone based injuries, but they set me back a lot, and they were kind of more mentally draining than anything else. So I completely fell out of love with the 400, and then I moved to my coach now, Glyn Hawkes, and we kind of built the bricks back up into it. So it's been like a 3-year process that we've kind of gone through, and I think for us it was nice to kind of run the times that were reflective of what I probably could have run when I was younger. Finally getting around to doing it. I've just done it very late. And yeah, it was just nice to be able to run times that I thought I would be capable of. So it was essentially a breakthrough year, because I've kind of been off the radar for such a long time. But I think in a way we wanted that to happen, and the plan had always been for that to happen. It just 51.3 wasn't necessarily in the plan. Like, that did just happen on the day, and I just felt great on the day, and that just is what happens when you feel great. But the plan had always been to PB, and the plan had always been to make teams, and the plan had always been to be competitive in the final. So in that sense, it went to plan.
Yeah, exactly. It seems to be sort of a culmination of everything finally falling into place, if you like. Even if you stretch it all the way back to the preparation and things like that. You touched on, when you were younger and being a teenager and things you had to manage. Are there any things that proved harder to work out than other things, sort of time management wise, or there was a mental thing?
So when I was growing up, and I was kind of like at the age where you do GCSEs and A levels and things, I grew up in an area that I had very limited access to anything. So I relied on my parents a lot to take me to anywhere and to do anything. And like, to get to the track would involve like my mum having to come home from work to take me to the track and things like that, that sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you just can't get there, because I'm also an August birthday. So it took me ages. Like, all my friends could drive before me. Like, I just had to sit there and wait until I could drive. So I didn't have the kind of freedom that a lot of people have. I think it was a 20-minute walk to the closest bus stop. Like, literally, it's kind of like I just lived in a field almost. So I think that was a struggle, and that was something that at the time I don't think I cared about it. I quite liked it, and I love going back to my parents' house now, because I kind of escape reality, and it's like, it's so much nicer. But equally, I have a car and I can get anywhere I want to now a lot easier than when I when I was young. And I think things like that, I definitely 100% took for granted what my parents like offered and how they helped me. Moving to uni was tough. I didn't like food preparations and eating right and stuff like that was such a shock to my system, because although I thought I was cooking the same food that my mum used to cook me, I really wasn't. And things like that obviously don't help with injury prevention, because if you're not eating right, your body's not kind of refueling in the right way and you're not recovering correctly. So it was pretty much a downward spiral from the second I moved out. But it also was probably the best downward spiral I had, because I learned so much from it. And I almost had to build myself up like from nothing again and literally learn everything. So I went into cooking classes. Like I would go home at Christmas and get my mum to like teach me how to cook things, just so I knew kind of the basics, and at least I knew what was the right amount of food to eat.
But that must have been a frustrating time, if you like, when you were trying to do the sport that you love, but you keep getting injured and it's not quite paying off as you thought it might.
Yeah, I didn't really feel the frustrations at the time, because I had so much else going on that I just distracted it with going like and doing other things with the people that I was living with at the time and things. And they did sport, but they didn't do it to an elite level. So there wasn't ever kind of like, it was all recreationally based around my first year at uni. And it was a perfect opportunity for me to go out and experience things. And a lot of people do say, like, you either go to uni and you're completely committed and you know what you want to get out of it, or you go to uni and you experience uni life for a little bit and then you make your decisions from that. And I think if I'd gone to uni in another circumstance, then maybe I wouldn't be where I am now. I am very much a believer of everything happens for a reason. So for me, I was like, I needed it. I needed to learn, and I needed to learn it for myself, not have other people telling me. Because it's all well and good having someone saying to you, oh, do this, do this, do this. This will help, this will help, this will help. But if you don't genuinely believe that, you're never going to kind of involve yourself into that lifestyle. And I think that was I was a very stubborn kid. So I think that was quite a me thing to be like, well, you've told me to do that, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, exactly. What are the biggest lessons then you think you've picked up along the way?
I actually think I'm still kind of learning everything, and everything changes and there's always new things. I always say now that in the past 3 years that I've been working with Glyn, like, I've had to accept that the majority of the time the coach is always right. And I probably didn't have that kind of mindset before I worked with him. So we're still, as a team, we've been working together for 3 years now nearly, but we're still learning every day, and there's still challenges every day that neither of us have had to deal with. And things like coming onto the World Class Performance Programme has been a whole new experience for both of us, because we've never had to experience kind of the factors that are involved in it that aren't kind of the main factors. And going to meetings, the two of us working as a team and things, it's not something that I've ever had to do before. I've always kind of seen athletics as a very individual sport, because you do it yourself, you're there, that's why you're there. Whereas like in the past few years, I've really, really seen how much like a big support team helps, or mine's quite a small support team, but like it has to be close knit and it has to work. Otherwise it kind of all negatively will impact on each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems that the makeup is quite perfect for you at the moment. There was one phrase I wanted to touch on. It was directly after you got your PB at the anniversary games, and you said in, I think, the video interview afterwards, that a large part of you achieving that was learning not to be as scared ahead of a race as you perhaps should be. Do you want to expand on that? Because I know you touched on the lactic side of things, but I wondered if it maybe built up into more than that.
Wonderful phrase, didn't I? Saying I'm come at peace with lactic, which in a way is true. I think for me, 300s are the easiest way for me to base everything, because that's where I sort of realised my potential when I was young, and I thought, actually, like, I'm ranked pretty highly in the UK. I basically haven't lost a race. Like, I must be quite good at something. And I think that was when I started to be like, this is fun. Like, I enjoy doing this stuff. But when I trained for threes and when I did threes, I didn't get lactic. So I'm a very speed-based runner, and I think I managed to kind of have enough speed endurance to get the whole way around a 300 without kind of experiencing the lactic. So when I started training for fours, it was literally like a complete shock to the system. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't realise that in like some sessions you just don't move when you it was just such a learning curve. And when I was younger, I completely freaked out and I hated it. And I was like, this means that I'm not going to achieve anything and I don't want to be a failure. So I went to the 2, purely because I went to something that for me was comfortable. Like, speed is always going to be my go-to option. That's how I run my races. That's how I prefer to train. A lot of everything we do is speed-based and speed endurance-based because that is who I am. So having to include lactic work and just accept that, like, you will get lactic in a 4. There is no way. I don't think I would know anyone that doesn't, to be honest. And it's just accepting that everyone's in that boat at the same time, probably. In that last 50 metres, I would be so surprised if anyone walked off and was like, yeah, I didn't have lactic, actually. Yeah. Because everyone's in that boat. Like, Shawnee Miller's in that boat. Like, everyone is. So I think it was just accepting that it happens to everyone, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad runner because you get lactic.
Is it a little bit brain training then that you have to adjust to, just to accept and carry on?
I think so. We did a lot of training that kind of put me into a lactic system, so I actually experienced it in training a lot more. I had a few, when I kind of was struggling with the 4 mentally, like, I had this big issue with whenever I hit lactic, I'd stop in a session, and I went through, I think, a year and a half, and I was with a different coach at the time, but I don't think I finished a session once because I was just so scared of the pain of lactic and what it meant. And I looked into it too much, and I thought, well, they're running further than me and they don't seem to be dying from lactic, so they must be better than me. And it kind of just, it completely blew my confidence. So having a smaller group was definitely a help for me, because there wasn't as many people around for me to be comparing myself to all the time. And I think, yeah, it's just one of those things, you just you do just accept it. Like, it's not a very nice thing to say, but I've accepted that I'll probably be sick after most of my races because that's just who I am. Some people aren't, some people are, and I unfortunately am the lucky one that gets to be sick. But it's kind of, I've just got used to it now. Like, it's quite normal for me to do. Like, I'd rather not, but it happens. So you've just kind of got to get on with it, I suppose.
You touched on it a bit as well with the being on the World Class programme now, which was announced earlier in November. First off, what does that mean to you? But does it almost give you a peace of mind for the season to come?
I mean, it was amazing. It was like a complete honour, to be honest. It's something that I've, since moving to Loughborough, I have kind of aimed to be on it and aspired to be on it and looked up to the people that are on it, because it's kind of like your governing body believes in you, in a way. Saying that, I've kind of been like, well, I ran 51.3 without it, so it's not kind of a deal breaker, and I don't think that the people that aren't on it have any reason to not be successful, because that isn't kind of, I was living proof last year that you don't need it. It's just kind of, it's nice to be recognised for what I did for the year, because it was a lot of work and there was a lot of moments where it was tense and it was tough on me and my coach and the rest of my training group, and it's nice to just kind of be able to say, look, this is what happened from it. And I think my training group especially, they've seen how hard I worked and how hard Glenn worked, and how kind of, it's nice for them to see that if you put in all that work, you will reap the benefits from it. And for them, I think especially, it's really helped push people on this year. Like, everyone's training so well, so it's quite nice in a way, because we're all in it together and everyone wants everyone to achieve well, so we're bouncing off that.
Yeah, I'll touch on that support network if you like, because like you said, athletics, we often look at it as an individual thing, but there's obviously a big team behind you, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's teammates. And you mentioned Glyn a few times as well. Yep. What is it about the two of you that just makes it work at the moment?
So I moved to Glyn in mid-indoor season a couple of years ago. It was quite a random change. He'd never coached 400s before. he was a 400 meter runner himself, but he was predominantly a sprint coach. So I lost the will to live with what was my plan at the time, and it wasn't working for me, and it had mentally just completely broken me. So I spoke to my old coach, and we kind of came up with a plan, and he kind of gave me a few sessions to tide me over, but then suggested that I spoke to Glyn. So I had a meeting with Glyn, and we kind of worked it all out from there. But I think the reason that our relationship works so well is he's done the event himself, so he gets it, and he is so blunt and to the point, which is something that I need. So if something goes wrong, he's like, well, you shouldn't have done that. Or if I do something right and I prove him wrong, which is quite rare, he's like, fair play, Amy, you pulled it out the bag today. But we'll always have a relationship where if I'm not feeling great, I will text him and say, look, this is going on, I'm annoyed, or this has happened, or this has happened. And we kind of just work everything out like that. But it helps because we've got such a small group that he's able to do that. And he's able to kind of give people the one-on-one services that a lot of coaches can't give, which for me, I'm being kind of like focusing on the technique side of running as well as just the sessions has been something that I've never experienced before and has really helped me.
Yeah, because I think people often talk about the technique side of things, but listening to you talk there, it sounds like his person skills, if you like, and his way to manage you as a person. Because I know you mentioned before that occasionally you can be a little bit stubborn when you're younger. Maybe that's why the relationship works quite well.
Yeah, and I think we're in Loughborough's such a good environment, and he's been overseen by kind of also world-class coaches, and Glyn's now at a stage where he gets, like, we've got some really talented athletes in our group that are all pretty much, they're all under 23 level, but they're like, they should all make European teams and things like that, and it's an amazing group to be in. And it's just because of the success almost from me, he's kind of been catapulted into this world that he hasn't had to experience before either. So we're learning everything as we go, but it is a nice dynamic. And I think having someone that you can talk to about everything and anything if you need to is kind of the way forward for me, because I've never had that before.
Exactly. We'll turn back the clock a little bit now, because we always like to sort of delve into why people got into their sport in the first place and what it actually did for them. So how is it you first ended up in athletics? And I know you mentioned the 300 sort of became your thing before progressing to 400.
Yeah, how did I get into athletics? My parents are international hockey players, so okay. I technically should be a hockey player. I mean, technically, I should be a hockey player. I just made the decision one day that I like to run fast, and that was it. And I got scouted at a primary school's cross-country thing when you run around the fields, and it's all great fun. And I got scouted at one of those to join Aldershot Farnham District, and I've literally never left them since, but I unfortunately rarely get to train there. But yes, I think it just kind of all stemmed from that, and just the fact that, like, athletics is such a simple sport. You either throw the furthest to win, you jump the highest to win, or you run the fastest to win. Like, there isn't really anything else that needs to be incorporated in it, and I like that. It's nice to see, like, it's one of those sports, isn't it, that it essentially gets a bit of bad press occasionally, and like, there's obviously the thing with like track events get more attention than field events, but ultimately, like, we all have the same aim, and it's always to kind of be the best one on the day. So there is no kind of comparisons between different people. Like, everyone's aim is to be the best on that day. And that's what I like about it, because you go to a champs and that is everyone's aim that day. Whether they say it or not, like, that is what they want. So yeah, I just quite like it in that sense. There's no different characters within a team sport. Obviously, there's different people that have different roles and different things that they've got going on. So it just makes it a bit simpler.
What drove you a little bit in those early years? When did the decision come to kind of switch it from a casual thing, if you like, to a competitive level?
I think To be honest, it wasn't until I was in my final year at uni and I was at a position where I'd always said I was going to go to uni for 2 years and then split my final year over 2 extra years, so I'd stay for 4, because I wanted to give running a go. And for the first 2 years of my degree, I didn't really commit to anything. And I think I sat down with my parents and my dad was like, well, you've not really shown that you want to be a runner, so why would you split your year? And I think it was at that point when I was like, actually, yeah, I haven't. Like, and I'm going to come out of this degree and almost have nothing to show for either of them because I've not committed to either of them enough. So I think that was kind of the main time that I kind of sat down to myself. I think I gave myself a bit of a talking to and was like, if you split your year, which is what you want to do, you need to prove that it's worth it. And I think for me it did, because I split in 2015 and I made my first senior team in 2015 and I went to European Indoors in Prague. I didn't run, but like I got the experience of being on a senior team and I kind of realised that I was going to be good enough to do it and I could commit to it, because I was always going to be in a position kind of once I graduated where I was always going to have to pick it's either running or it's working, Amy. Like you can't do both unless you're at a certain level. And I have always been very honest and truthful with myself, and I'm very kind of genuine about, like, I know where I'm at and I know kind of what level I'm at quite a lot of the time, and I'm quite realistic with my decisions. So I always knew that if I wasn't making teams, then I needed to work, because I wasn't going to make money from running and I wasn't going to make money because I wasn't going to be working. So I just knew, and you don't want to have stresses that are unnecessary because they just kind of spiral out of control again. So I think it was kind of my main turning point was my final year at uni, when I was like, you've either got to commit or not.
Yeah.
And for me, I chose to commit, so it was fine. But
kind of like a now or never moment, if you like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. And I think for this season it was a bit as well, because I was kind of I'd made a teams in 2015 and I'd experienced that, and I'd gone to under 23 champs, and that was great, and I kind of got to experience something. And then I went into a training group which were amazing, but the training setup wasn't for me, and it completely knocked me down. And it was a hard few years because it took me a bit of time to be like, actually no, I am good enough again, and build back up to that. So I think at the start of, well, it was essentially this time last year, I sat down with Glyn and I said, look, if I don't make World Indoor Team, I'm going to have to consider stopping, because I need to I work as well as train, and I was like, I need to work and earn money, and I need to put my career forward, because my career is very much, my career progression is not a sport-based career.
What is the career, by the way?
I work in marketing.
There you go. Do some sports marketing later down the line?
Yeah, that's the plan, but it's kind of, yeah, obviously at the moment my commitments are to running, and I'd like to continue running and be able to do both, which I've luckily got a balance of at the moment. But I was very, very genuine to Glyn, and I was like, look, if we don't make this team, then I'm going to have to consider where we're at. And luckily for us, it paid off, and we kind of made the most of the situation. And I think for us it was the perfect reason to push ahead, because I was like, if it goes well, I've made a platform for myself to step up onto even higher. And if it doesn't go well, at least I can walk away and say, well, I gave it everything.
Exactly. You're not left wondering what might have been.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, and I never wanted to kind of be in a position where I turned around and said, oh, I used to be this person and I could have achieved this, because like there's no point in that in the future. I never wanted to be one of those people. So I've always kind of been like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, give it 100%. And then kind of, if it doesn't pay off, it doesn't pay off, but I'd rather take the risk.
Yeah. Does that almost sum you up then as a person, that you're an all or nothing kind of person?
I think a few people would say yes. Once I make a decision on something, it normally kind of, in my head, that's it. Like you can't kind of compare. I think I've got loads of examples, but one was I wanted to buy a dog, so I went out and bought a dog. That was a non-sport related one, but there's other ones where I was dead set on going to British Champs to do the 200, 100% in it. Glyn was like, I don't think you should do it, Amy. And I was like, I'm doing it. This is when I learned that coaches are always right. And then I tore my hamstring. So coaches are always right after that one.
Yeah, it's a harsh way of learning the lesson. But...
Yeah, pretty much. If I've got something in my head that is happening, then a lot of the time it is. Unless someone reasonable sits down with me and says, "Look, you're being stupid," it chances are in my head it's going to happen.
Yeah. So obviously we've been talking about last year quite a lot, but what's in your head now? What do you want from the sport now?
I think we've been quite realistic with the decisions, and I kind of catapulted myself into a different realm almost when I ran 51.3, and running that again, running a little bit faster would be lovely, but to run 51 consistently is something that not many people have had the not many people have done yet. That's kind of the aim. I'd like to kind of focus a bit more into like the individual side as well as the relay. Last year I committed quite a lot to my relays, and I did every single relay for GB, which was amazing, and I love relays. But in doing the relays, I missed out on quite a few individual based races that I would have helped me kind of develop as a 400 meter runner. So the plan is to get a happy balance between both this year. I haven't really. I would like to say I've got aims, but until it kind of becomes a part of the season, it hasn't really kind of got into my head. We are planning obviously to go to the Worlds. That's what everything's training towards and gearing towards. So it's still ages away. So yeah, everything's kind of gearing towards that, and then hopefully do a few championships and a few races, like high level races beforehand, to get some good experience in.
In the immediate future, then, are there any events we'll be likely seeing you in the near future? I
actually don't know, if I'm honest. I would love to say yes, but I really don't know. I don't. I'm trying to think of one, at least like one to say, but I actually don't know. I'm not going to probably open until end of Jan, and they'll be kind of more speed based. So supposedly you'll be seeing me over 60 meters. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. I don't actually like starting on a straight line, so we'll see. I quite like the stagger because you're not I don't find it as pressurized. So I'd rather not do any 60s, but equally 60s are really good for speed, and that's what I'm working on over winter. So I can't really avoid them that much.
Final question for me before I wrap up, because we always like to give an opportunity, to whoever we have on, to almost plug their sport, if you like. And I would say, if there is someone who's listening and wants to get into an athletic side of thing or a running side of the sport, why is running such a great sport to turn to?
I think so. If I go back to I've done a few meet and greets with a few of the kind of younger generation versus the older ones at the club that I'm at, and I think their main interests are, how do I get to be like KJT and people like that? And it's kind of having the right role models will help you in any sense. But then I would say some of the role models that I have and that I looked up to when I was younger don't do athletics. And I think I would never say to someone that is probably even under the age of 15, I would never say, oh, now you need to pick something to specialise in. I think it's very much try everything, see what everything is, and then you'll find what you love. And if you love it, then you're willing to commit to it. But until you find that, then you're kind of you don't want it to become a chore. But I would say, yeah, I think it's just, if you've either got kids that are interested in it, or you think you're interested in it, then just go and have a go and see if you enjoy it. You'll know pretty early on if you like it and what you like about it. And I think there's so many people around now that are willing to help you out, and there's so many athletes that I know that will reply to people if they get a message from people saying, oh, I want to get into this, how do you help, like, what would you say, they'll reply. And I've definitely done it for a few people that have messaged me on like Instagram and stuff. I've always said, oh, try this or do this or just do what you enjoy, because ultimately if you don't enjoy it, then why would you do it?
I'll second that message. I like that answer, by the way. And with that, I'll wrap up this interview. And thank you again, Amy, for coming on in the first place and talking us through the rise, if you like, and as well your time working out your running a little bit as well, because that's kind of one of the interesting things I think that's come out of this. I hope the speed or picking up the speed over 60 metres and 200 metres goes well, and look forward to seeing what you do in 2019.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Follow SportSpiel Pod on Twitter, Facebook and on Instagram, or go to our website sportspielonline.com. Thanks again to Amy for coming onto the show. As ever, we hope everyone enjoyed it. But now it's time for part 2 of the podcast, where it's our turn to look back and review 2018. We have a number of categories for our review where we've picked some contenders each. We'll go back and forth and talk about our selections and have a little bit of reminiscing about the sporting year. First up then, as a category, as I flip over my page, we are starting off with our funniest moments of 2018. Would you like to go first with your first pick?
This was one of the easier categories for me to answer straight off without actually having to think about it. I watched this game live, I watched this moment live, and I just thought, what on earth has happened? And it was Willy Caballero's pass against Croatia, which fell straight at the feet of Ante Rebic, who smashed it home to set Croatia on their way to a famous victory. And it was just hilarious, really. You couldn't help but feel sorry for Caballero in some ways, but also it was just funny because how he just got it so badly wrong.
He did not have a good World Cup,
He did not. There were quite a few funny moments from the World Cup, but that for me was the not just funniest moment of that tournament, but the funniest of the year, just because it was. And also, it's Argentina, a country you just love to hate if you're British.
On that note, I mean, I'll clarify that I have got a short list of 3 for this category. The first one, since you mentioned the World Cup, is World Cup related. Michy Batshuayi of Belgium, I think it was the game against England in the group, if I'm not mistaken, where he kicked the ball onto the post, it bounced up and hit him smack in the face, rather. A lovely, lovely moment, and of course he tweeted about it afterwards, saying, "Why am I so stupid?" Lovely, hilarious moment. My other
and no
two...
one got hurt apart from his face.
But his face might have been slightly bruised. Another couple I mention are from the NHL this year. Talked to you about this before we started recording. Gritty. Have you heard of Gritty?
I hadn't until you told me about Gritty.
So for people not in the know, Gritty is the new mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers team. He was introduced this year, and when he was introduced, people went, "Oh my God, what on earth is that?" A little bit in the same vein as when Partick Thistle unveiled that horrendous Kingsley mascot, which was based on their sponsor.
Or when West Brom
year.
Unveiled the boiler.
Oh, a little bit like
this
that.
year.
But Gritty is really something special and unique in his own way. To describe him, he's like a googly-eyed orange furball of a monster who occasionally gets on skates and flaps around on the ice a little bit. But his ridiculous face has for some reason gone viral on the internet, in that he's been parodying Kim Kardashian of late and all manner of other Z-list, A-list celebrities, whatever you want to call them. Can't say I'm a fan of that type of person, but whatever. To fully understand it for everyone, Google Gritty, the mascot, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. My final funniest moment I will mention as well is Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018 for the first time in their history. Lovely historic sporting moment from them. Their captain, Alex Ovechkin, his first ever cup, he's one of the best players in the league, spent pretty much every day for the next 2 weeks drunk after that final win and posted every moment of it on Instagram for us all to watch. My God, there is nothing more entertaining than watching a drunk Russian drinking copious amounts of beer out of the Stanley Cup at his own house. Great to watch.
I think Kimi Räikkönen, as a drunk Finn, will push him quite closely, though, in terms of hilarity value, because at the F1 end-of-season dinner, he had slightly too much to drink and just caused chaos, but funny chaos. So again, make sure you watch that video. And on a similar vein to Batshuayi, another funniest moment that's just popped to mind was Liverpool versus Roma in the Champions League semi-finals, when Dejan Lovren kicked the ball onto James Milner's face. And it ricocheted in for an own goal. And then Milner taking the what's it out of himself on Twitter afterwards was a very funny moment.
I enjoyed that goal.
As a Liverpool fan, I didn't, but at the time, but now it's funny.
Appreciate the
It's
humour.
like Karius' goalkeeping in the final. At the time, it wasn't funny, but now it is very funny.
Prime example. Moving on to our second category, which is our unsung moment of the year category. When we were talking about it before, we kind of treated it as an achievement that went under the radar, but could in the long run actually mean quite a lot. That's the idea behind this category. For my nomination for this category, I'm sticking with the podcast and one of our former podcast guests on episode 15, and that was boxer Stacey Copeland, who, if you are living under a rock somewhere, you will obviously see what she's been doing on social media. She's really building herself a great presence and spreading a wonderful message. She became the first ever British female boxer to win the Commonwealth title in July of this year. She did that by defeating Mapula Ngubane, I hope I said that right, by unanimous decision in Zimbabwe. She won the belt, which she eventually got her hands on. I think they had to make it first because it didn't actually exist beforehand. That's an unsung moment because, for me, it should have got more coverage than it did. It obviously got a few mentions in a few sporting media outlets and a lot of local press as well in Manchester, where she's from. But it stands to be a pivotal moment for me because of the platform she's building herself with her Pave the Way movement, not to mention her nomination in the Grassroots Award category at the Sportswomen of the Year Awards this year. And also, adding on top of that, the radio show she now has in Manchester. She is becoming, very quickly, one of the most important, inspiring mouthpieces for women's sport in this country. So, by using that Commonwealth title as to pave the way, as her slogan says, that could really be something big in the future of women's boxing, but also women's sport in general in this country.
Stacey is an incredible woman. Listening to her on 5 Live this year, she did a great talk. She's been on BBC, various BBC News stories a few times, just inspiring kids to get involved in boxing. But she doesn't just sort of talk the talk, she actually walks the walk as well. She's an incredible boxer. Previous life, she was a footballer as well. Just a genuinely positive person with so much to give. Cannot wait to see how her career continues to progress, and I think before long she'll be a household name rather than just someone known locally and in the local press. Hopefully before long the big tabloids, the BBC will do more on her, Sky Sports, Women's Hour, these people will get her involved, and just excited to see where her career goes. I've also gone for someone whose story is incredible but probably wasn't picked up as much as it should have been. So I wrote about her on the 52 earlier this year. Caitlin Beavers. So she was just 16 years old when she became the first woman ever to referee a rugby league match at Wembley, taking charge of the Year 7 Champion Schools Boys Final. Almost said that very wrong. She was, at the same time, she was also studying for her GCSEs, and she was helping Leeds Rhinos, who are only formed in September, help win their first silverware after less than a year of existence. Since I wrote that piece, she's also gone on to win her first England caps, scoring twice on her debut. I mean, she's only just turned 17, I think. What an incredible young woman. Fantastic role model. There's been obviously a lot of negativity around football referees recently with attacks on them and what have you. But to see a 16-year-old wanting to take charge of boys rugby, men's rugby, be a referee, and also the incredible thing she's achieving on the pitch as well. Truly inspirational woman, and again, someone like Stacey who in the next few years I think we'll be seeing a lot more of.
Absolutely. Category number 3 in our review of 2018 is the most inspirational award. I'll kick off with, personally speaking, I have 2 nominations for it, but I'll kick off with the first one because I think we've both got this one down. Hands down, we've mentioned it since it started throughout this year, and it's Billy Munger. obviously, and what he's been through. And that was typified when he won the Helen Rollason Award at Sports Personality of the Year a week ago now, as we record. We've alluded to it several times on this show, the journey he's been on after losing both of his legs in that horrendous crash last year. But his determination, his motivation to get back in the car, and not only to race, but to set an example for others to follow. Hard to find a more inspiring person right now.
Yeah, and what he's doing as well is what a lot of other incredible sort of para-athletes do, is that they show that disability, isn't really a thing. They're able to do things just in a different way to the rest of us. And again, he's proving that he can still drive just as fast with a slightly different function of leg. And that's the only difference. But it was also really interesting to hear Emily Glanville's interview when she said how much he's supposedly struggling for funding. And you just think, how? Because he's got so much love, so much support, so much attention. He's naturally gifted as a racer. How on earth can he be struggling for funding? So hopefully that'll be resolved soon. He's got a lot of fairly influential friends and acquaintances now, so hopefully they can come together and give him a future he deserves. If he gets to F1 one day, that will be incredible, and true testament to him. Really, really special young man. And going on to my inspirational moment, a very inspirational, I say young woman, she's the same age as me, so youngish woman.
You're young. You can be young.
We talked about her on the last episode. We've spoken a lot about her on social media recently, and it's got to be Ada Hegerberg. Not only the inaugural winner of the Women's Ballon d'Or, which is in itself an incredible achievement, but her reaction to all the furore and all the negativity surrounding what was said by that DJ, whose name I still won't use on this podcast. The way she's reacted to it is so classy, so inspirational. The way she's just deflected the issue back onto, let's talk about women's sport, let's talk about how we're going to grow women's football. She wrote a piece which I know we shared on the SportSpiel Facebook and Twitter pages, which
that was so good.
You have to read it at least once. It's so good. Read it from start to finish. The way she talks about so many different things is so powerful, so emotive. To think she's only 23, what she's already achieved in the game, what she's doing to help grow the sport in terms of, trying to get better conditions for female footballers in Norway, being part of this Leon side who are tearing up the rule book. A brilliant, brilliant young woman, and cannot wait to see her career goes. And according to the Guardian, not even the best women's footballer in the world. So that's how strong a position the game is in, as we've discussed previously. So just a brilliant woman, and true inspiration.
Agreed. My final inspirational moment of the year, the so-called sister survivors, as they've become known, who effectively took down the former US gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Rachel Den Hollander, she was the first to speak out and publicly accuse Nassar of the sexual abuse, and she confronted him in court when he was sentenced in January of this year. Hard to think it's actually still that recent that sentencing actually took place. It was a hugely powerful 36-minute statement that I think will be replayed time and time again, and it really sends out such an important message for this sexual abuse scandal, but some other sexual abuse scandals that I know are still currently ongoing in a number of governing bodies. In July as well, 140 survivors of Nassar's abuse, they received the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage at the 2018 ESPY Awards. Sarah Klein, Ali Raceman, and a softball player, Tiffany Thomas Lopez, they all accepted and spoke out at the awards. Obviously, it can be very easy to look at the Larry Nassar side of things and the ongoing crisis that US gymnastics are still finding themselves in. I think a report was published recently that I will have to delve into a little bit more about how much they tried to cover up what was going on. Really horrible report to hear actually exists. But from the inspiring side of things, look at the women that spoke out, look at the women that fought every step of the way to make sure Larry Nassar got the justice he deserved.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'll be speaking a little bit more about that later on, but yeah, some incredible females. To have that courage and strength to talk about something so difficult is something you can only admire.
Exactly. Moving on to controversial moment, because we're going to keep the tone down. It's a little bit more depressing. controversial moment. We obviously had a few in the year. I'll briefly touch upon what happened with Ada Hegerberg, which we've mentioned enough times on this show because we did quite a lot about it in the previous episode, and the French DJ and what he said. But my controversial moment of the year is Colin Kaepernick, the former NFL player, who of course kick-started the protest movements whereby a lot of players are kneeling during the national anthem at the moment. Donald Trump obviously has a lot of things to say on that, as do a number of the NFL team owners. Kaepernick, he doesn't have a team at the moment, but he took part in a Nike commercial this year, starred in it, and the slogan of that commercial was "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything." The reception to that, mixed, I think it's fair to say, because a lot of questions obviously come out of an advertising campaign like that, namely, should you be mixing politics with sport, and what is essentially a sports brand. Also, the protests themselves remain controversial because of the disrespect that it's supposed to have, that a lot of people take from the national anthem towards the country, something I think we find a little bit difficult to relate to over in this country because we don't really have that same attachment to a national anthem and a flag like they do over in the United States. And there were a number of calls from people to boycott Nike following that advert. And let's also not forget that I think the interim head of US Gymnastics lost her job or had to resign because she tweeted that she wasn't in favour of that advertising campaign as well. So a lot of fallout from that advertising campaign. But again, you can dig a lot deeper into, should Nike be playing politics in that sort of way?
At the same time, can't you argue, though, with the way certain things are in the world at the moment, that sport and politics are now inextricably linked?
Which is my perspective. I think you, in a lot of ways, in an ideal world, they shouldn't be, but in a lot of ways, they're inextricably linked now. You often don't get one without the other, as the tannoy comes into play here. As I was saying, before the tannoy came in, we've mentioned a number of times on this podcast how politics and sport are linked right to the very end. We talk about Saudi Arabia and how they're using sport to promote certain messages and maybe detract from a few other controversial incidents that they've been having. Jamal Khashoggi jumps to my mind at the moment. And also an example I think you're going to come on to in terms of a controversial moment, and that's Russia again. We
couldn't go through a SportSpiel episode without talking about Russia, really, could we?
Nope.
It's just been one hell of a roller coaster once again this year. All came to a head in September when WADA said they were going to lift the ban on RUSADA and therefore allow Russia to compete. However, at the time they did that, it was also discovered that they offered them a compromise. So they hadn't actually sort of they hadn't actually completed all the sanctions asked of them because they'd been given this option to compromise. And again, it was just awful. We all saw on our Twitter feeds the amount of British athletes, rightly so, coming out and speaking about it, saying they had no confidence in WADA, that it was the wrong decision to reinstate, etc., etc. It also caused Becky Scott, the chair of the Athlete Commission, to resign in protest of the decision. That then led to accusations of potential bullying and cover-ups within WADA, which made it look very bad. But I think the thing that has really put the egg on their face is actually what broke this morning, Saturday, as we record, that RUSADA look like they're going to have the ban reinstated because they refused to cooperate fully with WADA when they sent a team over last month.
Who would have seen that coming?
Just unbelievable. RUSADA have been given so many opportunities now and they're still failing to cooperate. How can we ever even consider letting them back in the near future is something ridiculous. It's just been dragging on for far too long now. Something needs to happen. Someone needs to put their foot down and say, right, that's it. Russia are banned from everything, or banned from this, and this. Because the IAAF have been very strong with their stance. They said then they weren't going to allow Russia to compete in 2019, apart from athletes who could prove they were already clean as neutrals. And then obviously this happened this morning. It's slightly gone under the radar a little bit, but I think as the days progress, we're probably going to hear a little bit more about it over Christmas. Oh dear.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Such a shambles. I'm never getting a job at WADA.
No, neither of us are. To keep the tone downbeat, and low. We'll move on to our worst moment of the year. Would you like to go first with that one?
Yes, it's something we've already discussed. It is the Larry Nassar case. Obviously, this week-long sentencing took place in January, so a long time ago now, but the memories are still very raw and very fresh. 150 women in total made statements against Nassar during the week-long sentencing, and there are quite a lot of these were eventually shown on social media, especially the Ali Raisman interview and the two sister survivors. Really, really tough to watch. Various different emotions ranging from anger and hatred to just general upset and disgust, and it was horrible to see what a man in such a position could have done to these women. It's always staggered me how people can treat other people so badly, and to learn the full extent and the full horrors of what he did to these women and the way it was covered up was just horrible. And you just like to think that yes, we've had accusations of bullying and things like that in certain sports in this country, but you just hope that nothing has ever happened on that sort of scale to our athletes, because it's truly horrible. And what makes it even worse is, as you mentioned earlier, the cover-ups are starting to be unravelled now. So in October, the former USA Gymnastics Chief Executive Officer, so the person in charge, Steve Penny, was arrested on suspicion of tampering with evidence, and then a month later in November, former Michigan State President Lou Anna Simons also accused of lying to the police over the whole trial and everything. So we're 10, 11 months down the line and things are still being discovered now, and it just makes you think, what else don't we know? It's truly horrible, but also inspiring at the same time. Simone Biles is continuing to be an incredible athlete. Some of these athletes are, still speaking up and still showing that actually they are the better people. They've overcome this and they're going to make their lives better, and that the perpetrator is going to rot in jail, as we all hope he deserves to. But yeah, it's just horrible. That whole situation is just... It puts a downer on sport. Sport is such a great thing. Sport is such a great tool. But when things like this happen, it's difficult to take in. Yeah,
like I say, we can take a positive out of that horrible episode. And you mentioned Simone Biles as well. Year or two, if she's not already, she will have a platform as big as Serena Williams, in my opinion. She's an incredible woman, and still just 21, which is ridiculous.
And she managed to go and win however many world medals with kidney stones this year.
My God. My worst sporting moment, I actually kept it to sport for once. Usually I like to go divert down the political route or the big question route, if you like, but mine is purely sport based, because hands down for me, my worst sporting moment of 2018 was the self-glorified, egotistical, money-making show that was The Match between Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, that head-to-head that they had in Las Vegas relatively recently. Both are past their best. It's a ludicrous winner-takes-all concept where you have two stupidly rich people both competing for stupidly high amounts of money. I think the prize fund was $9 million. Whatever, they both have enough anyway. If that is the future of golf broadcasting, where you have these big money head-to-heads, huge amounts of money at stake, and I think a large part of it is to try and tap into that sports betting market that football has done recently, that horse racing obviously is a part of, and a number of other sports are trying to tap into that market as well. Worrying for me, but as a showdown, as a sporting spectacle, it just fell flat on its face, in my view.
If you're going to do it, you do it when those players were at their prime and when they really did hate each other 15 years ago, not now when they're both past their best. You saw it in the equivalent of the weigh-in when they were supposed to look mean and moody at each other, and they just started laughing. It was just horrible, and it makes you think, is golf going down the same route that boxing's going down in these stupid one-off shows like McGregor Mayweather? Just money-making schemes, trying to get publicity. But at the same time, there are enough idiots out there that are interested in this sort of thing. And it detracts, like boxing, love it or hate it, is an age-old sport that's passed through the traditions of time and still going strong now. People still take a massive interest in it. And people want to take it seriously. And the same with golf. Golf has been around for so long. And this event happened just a few weeks after the Ryder Cup, which was insane. Everyone who loves golf loves the Ryder Cup. You cannot not love it. It's just a brilliant tournament. To then follow it up with this was just meh. And then you've got people like Georgia Hall, who win the British Open, don't even get more than a 10-second mention at Spotty. It's just golf is in a very weird place at the moment, and you just like to think it doesn't go down the stupid one-off exhibition route and continues to hold dear the Opens, its brilliant male and female athletes, the Ryder Cup, the Solheim Cup, and so on.
Yes, likewise. Now we're going to pick up the mood, finally. It's time for our best moment of the year. I have 3.
I have 1.
I did not do well in the narrowing down stage. My first one that I'm going to mention, it got a lot of attention at the Sports Personality of the Year Awards last week, and that's England netball winning gold at the Commonwealth Games. Firstly, that commentary is immense, like so good. No time left on the clock, and getting that last minute goal to go a point up. Game changer for the sport. Tracy Neville should have won Coach of the Year, by the way.
As said by the one and only Freddie Flintoff.
Exactly. As much as I love Gareth Southgate and what he's done, Tracy Neville did coach the winning team, by the way. Say that they did win Team of the Year, happy days. They did also win Moment of the Year at the awards for that, which was voted for by the public. So a great moment for women's sport in general, again, but such a historical moment, and like I said, real game changer for netball and for women's sport in this country.
Indeed, and it was just nice that the public are recognising now that what they've achieved is special, and that the public are taking interest in women's sport, which hasn't been the case for a long time. So again, it just shows progress, which is good. And sticking with the theme of women's sport, obviously, as everyone knows, I do talk a lot about women's sport and I have a passion for it, and it is an event this year that was just incredible, that wins my moment of the year, and that was being part of the 2018 Vitality Hockey Women's World Cup. Being there on the first day, standing in a full stadium, singing the national anthem with like 10,500 people all there to watch our England women play was enough to raise goosebumps for me, and that doesn't happen very often. It was a really special moment, and just, I guess, being a part of it, knowing that I'd helped play a small part in putting that incredible tournament on, was brilliant. The whole 2 weeks were hot and they were sweaty and stressful, but
except the day that I went.
Yeah, it did thunderstorm a bit, but it was such a special thing to be a part of. Obviously, England didn't do as well as we liked, but we had Ireland to follow as well, and that was also special.
That was a great story.
On the final day, 10,000 people inside the stadium, English people singing the Irish national anthem, supporting the minnows on against the Dutch. Ultimately, they got thrashed, but it was always going to happen.
Got to the final, though.
This World Cup won't be remembered for the Dutch winning it. It will be remembered for Ireland and the great spectacle that England hockey put on. My colleagues did an amazing job. The players were a joy and have continued to be a joy to work with day in, day out. To just have been a part of that was truly special, and memories that will live with me for a long, long time.
Likewise, and I thank you again for the free tickets that I got, as did the friends that went with me got, even though we did go that one day where there were horrendous thunderstorms and one of the games had to be postponed while the rain came thundering down. Since you mentioned big sporting spectacles, and personally I love a big sporting spectacle, and that's why I couldn't narrow it down to just one, I had to mention the World Cup in Russia and the summer we had, because we all got caught up in that. I would just like to go on record though and say I never thought it was coming home. People have accused me of saying I did. I never said it was coming home. Thanks for setting that record straight. But in terms of just not just a sporting spectacle, obviously it was a great tournament. Even if you look away from the England side of things, Germany getting knocked out early, the shocks, Spain getting knocked out by the host Russia in a penalty shootout, France going on and winning it,
Croatia getting to the final
after years of promising to show something, and then they finally did. Great tournament, shocks galore, but just the impact it had on an everyday person in this country as well, whether it was going out to a pub with your mates and watching some football. I know this probably helps that at work at Essex Live we have a nice little link with the people who run the Walkabout pub bar in Chelmsford, and that the 2 nights that England were playing on a day where we were all off, we managed to get a seat right in front of the big screen in there that was reserved for all of us. And just those memories of that baking hot summer and watching great games of football will live with me for quite some time, even though it didn't come home. But hey-ho, I'm sure it will in the near future. But also, I will quickly pay homage, if you like, to the Winter Olympics in February in Pyeongchang, because, again, it was another great event. And I want to pay particular mention to Lizzie Arnold and what she did, because she got my vote for Sports Personality of the Year in the end. Don't know where she actually finished in the final 6, but she got my vote purely because of the moment that she delivered in winning gold. Let's not forget what she went through beforehand, because she was not at the top of her game going into those Winter Olympics, had to face dizziness again, and ultimately retired on a high as one of the legends of British sport. So her moment, and also the Winter Olympics as a whole, and we obviously got caught up in it because we were doing our Winter Olympic specials, a great 2 weeks of sport, which then continued with the Winter Paralympics after that.
Yeah, it was amazing. The 5 medals that came home from the Winter Olympics, and also for Lizzie, one incredible woman, so humble as well. She obviously had that major back surgery, so she had a sort of a bit of a dip in the middle of 2018, but finished the year on a high as well, because she's now an expectant mother. So congratulations to Lizzie and her husband, and we wish her all the best for the future, and we think she's going to continue to be an inspirational woman in sport for a long time to come yet.
Hands down, there is a lot more to come. Right, we will quickly finish this off because we have 2 more categories to get through before
we've been going for quite a
wrap
while.
up. Yeah, looking at the time, we've been going for half an hour. Looking more at ourselves, the podcast itself, and we're going to name our favourite SportSpiel moment of the year, which is a sort of our proud moment when we looked at one of our guests doing something in 2018. I'm going to guess the first one I have, you also have.
Yeah.
Is it Winter Olympics based?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Go for it.
So 2017, obviously my proudest moment was seeing Sammy Kinghorn going on and win 2 world golds after we had her on the show. And this year we had Laura Dees on the show in the build-up to the Winter Olympics. I think we were pretty confident she had a chance of getting a medal.
Well, she said
She said herself that she expected her and Lizzie to be firmly in contention for a medal. To actually see her win bronze was brilliant. Obviously, you had the final run where I think it was the German athlete was going down the track. Laura was already in 3rd, so we're thinking, not quite sure if she's going to make it or if Lizzie's going to get the goals, but she didn't have a clean run. And then to see initially Lizzie get that goal was brilliant, but then also to see that Laura had got the bronze. It's such a proud moment. Whenever we see our athletes do well on the podcast, I think we both feel a sense of pride. We feel like we've been a little bit of a part of it as well. But to see Laura win that bronze, having spoken to her and know how much heartache she went through of not making Seoul, how much work she's had to put in over the last few years. She's always slightly been in Lizzie's shadow, which I think she admits herself. But now she started this new season on a high. She missed the first week with concussion, but she's got a couple of World Cup medals under her belt now. Brilliant athlete, brilliant person. I'm very proud to see her win that bronze.
Likewise. In terms of sporting success on this podcast, I will also mention Beth Dobbin, because when we interviewed her, it was, I think, 2 weeks after she broke the Scottish 200-metre record. A matter of weeks after that, she broke it again, and then she broke it again shortly after that as well, as she went on to become the British champion. Bearing in mind she was working 2 jobs at that time, had no funding, and has an incredible backstory with her epilepsy and everything she's had to face in terms of getting to where she is in terms of performance. To see her rapid rise, and we're talking really rapid, it was in the space of like 2 months where she just took off.
I thought you were talking about her general speed on the track there.
That as well, a nice little analogy if you want to have a racetrack mention there. But yeah, and now look at her, ahead of 2019, she's part of the world-class programme now for British athletics. So looking forward to what she does with funding and backing now, because the amount of work she's put in, and to see the amount of attention she's getting as well, since we did our interview with her, so good to see.
She's also got a very loyal fan base, given on the the listening figures for her podcast with us and the readership figures I got when I did a piece on the 52. There's a very loyal fan base there, so that's hopefully as she gets better, that will continue to grow and she gets the attention she deserves. She's a brilliant young athlete.
Exactly. One final moment I'll mention, because we haven't actually touched on our mental health specials that we did earlier this year as well in May during Mental Health Awareness Week, and we had Ruth Fox on, still 19, doing a lot, so much. She doesn't stop for breath, that girl, in terms of raising awareness about mental health. And such a good moment when she actually released her book, because she had an e-book out before, but she's actually released a full novel now that I urge everyone to go out, buy it, read it. But the message she sends out, what she's been through to get to this point, again, it's only relatively recently that she was struggling with her mental health in a way that was so debilitating. But if ever there's someone you want to see do well, it's her, and I'm so glad that she's doing what she's doing this year. And again, I hope that message, that hashtag Team Fox message that we've got going on, continues, because what she's doing is absolutely fantastic. And so yeah, I want to put a shout out on this episode for what she's done this year.
And to all our mental health guests as well. It was a really eye-opening week. We covered a lot of topics.
We talked about a lot of stuff that week.
We did. So I feel like it was very well respected as well. So we did good there, I think.
Yes,
we can look back on that with pride.
Final category. And since 2019 is now upon us, we thought we'd leave the last category to looking ahead to 2019. And this one is our athlete to watch in 2019. So we'd like to have a little preview, if you like. Who should we, from your perspective, be keeping tabs on next year?
So I've been greedy. I've picked 2 athletes, one male, one female. We start with my world of hockey, and one of the athletes I really think we should be looking out for next year is Liam Ansell. So he recently played for England at the Men's World Cup, was named one of the 5 best players of the tournament. Wasn't even the initial 18. Hadn't been selected by Danny Kerry for whatever reason, don't know what that was, but Sam Ward was injured. Liam came in, he'd been in great form for East Grinstead all year and was by far our best player. It was brilliant, really, really threatening in attack. 2 brilliant goals to his name. Every time I've seen him play internationally, I've always thought he's a really good player. And he's still young, he's still got a lot of learning to do. With the Pro League coming in this year, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to see him play against the best on the biggest stage, and he's a really exciting young talent. One of the blokes I haven't spent that much time with, so I don't know him very well personally, but everyone talks well of him. And hopefully now he's proved that he deserves to be in that starting 18, obviously with the rolling subs and everything, week in, week out, and look forward to seeing him score a lot more goals. And my second athlete, someone who's going to score a lot of points, but on the rugby pitch this time, is Kelly Smith, the Gloucester and England winger. So she broke through earlier in the year in the Six Nations, but didn't really hear too much about her in amongst all the other players. But I watched her. I was actually very lucky enough to watch her against the USA when I went to the Quarter Internationals, and by far her and Katie Daly-McLean were the outstanding players I felt on that evening. She's got insane pace. She's a really, really intelligent winger. She scores some great tries. All 3 of those internationals that she played in, I thought she just was the standout player. England has had a plethora of talent on the wing in recent years. Kay Wilson, Amy Wilson-Hardy, Jess Breach, Abigail Dow, Ellie Kildunn, Millie Wood. The list goes on, but I think Kelly Smith has now proven that she has got a place at the top level of rugby. Whether she is awarded a contract or not when they come out in January, I'd like to think she's going to be very much in the frame. She's been a regular over the last few games, so really excited for her, and I think she's only going to get better in 2019.
My athlete to watch in 2019, repeating myself quite a lot because I've already mentioned her, Beth Dobbin, hands down, again, because of the rapid rise that we've seen this year. Like I said, breaking the Scottish 200-metre record before she was on our show, the amazing story with her epilepsy and how she nearly died when she was a teenager, and then breaking the record again as she went on to become British champion. Not to mention she also finished 7th in the European Championships that year as well in Berlin. I think it was in August time. Again, such a rapid rise in such a short space of time. So now, with the funding, with the backing that she has, and just that support really, as we've always said, with regards to a lot of sports, if you can get that backing and that support, you'd be surprised what you can do, what a lot of people can do. So now that she's got that, I can only see her going up and up the ranks again, and whenever there's an athletics meet, a World Cup, European Championships, whatever, keep tabs on her, because she is going places. You don't get on the front cover of Athletics Weekly if you're not good. And she achieved that at the end of this year as well. So I can't wait to see what comes next.
And that's our whistle stop tour of 2018 done.
Yes, that is the review of
our
2018
conclusion
is
of the year is
complete.
done. We only look forward now.
Exactly. All 2019 and beyond. You're listening to SportSpiel, available on Audio Boom, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Right, that is almost it for episode 33, and of course for 2018 on the SportSpiel podcast. Next year, 2019, as we said, we're only looking forwards now. We have a lot of things coming, including a new logo, which may or may not be done by the start of 2019. At the moment, I'm thinking no, but it's in the pipeline, so keep your eyes out. Likewise, we're also growing the team. We've had a few additions to the SportSpiel team recently. If you are interested in joining us as either a writer or an interviewer or a contributor in some way, do email us at sportspielpod@gmail.com. Tell us what you're good at. Tell us why you want to join. And of course, we'll let you know if you want to be part of the team in 2019. As always, we'll encourage people to follow us on social media. We're on that Facebook thing, Twitter, and on the Instagram thing as well. All of our handles are SportSpielPod, so put that into the search bar and we'll pop up. But other than that, lots of exciting content to come next year. Our first episode of the new year will be on January the 6th.
With a special guest presenter as well.
Plus we have an interview, as always, that Lewis Mitchie has conducted this time around. So that's another new interviewer to join the team. He's obviously written for us a lot in the past and also does our social media as well. But yes, like you said, we have a guest third presenter that day.
Yes, we do.
Are we going to keep it under wraps
we are.
dramatically?
I'm also in talks with a couple of other people about coming on as guest presenters as well later in the year. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
We're bringing you the real athletes.
Exactly. Less of us, more of them.
Yeah.
That's what the people want.
That's what we preach as well, so we probably should stick to that.
Exactly, yes. Right. And with that, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in and for listening throughout 2018. We wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when it comes around. Until next time, it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from Will. We will see you very soon.
Merry Christmas.